space. And with stereophonic recording, the feeling of space and perspective is brought to you.
Hello and welcome. I'm Josh, and for today's video, I am going to be reviewing the album Icky Mettle by the band Archers of Loaf. Archers of Loaf is an indie rock band from Chapel Hill, North Carolina that was formed in 1991. The band broke up in 1998, but they were revived in 2011 and are currently active today. They released the song Rally Days in 2020, which was their first new song that they had released since 1998 when they broke up. They have released 4 studio albums. Their last studio album, White Trash Heroes, was released in 1998. But the album I'm reviewing today is Icky Mettle. This was their debut studio album. It was released on September 7th, 1993. The label on this album is Alias, and the producer is Caleb Southern. Caleb Southern is an American producer who is best known, other than producing this album, for producing the first 3 albums for the band Ben Folds 5. So now I'm going to go over the members of the band Archers of Loaf. You have Eric Bachman. He is the vocalist and guitarist for the band. And following the breakup of Archers of Loaf in 1998, he started a solo band called Crooked Fingers. This band released 6 albums between the years of 2000 to 2011. And then when he got back together with Archers of Loaf, he stopped making projects for Crooked Fingers. Then you have Matt Gitling, who is the bassist for the band, Eric Johnson, who is another guitarist in the band, and Mark Price, who is the drummer. The singles for this album include Wrong, Web in Front, and Might. These were the 3 singles for this album, and the genre for this album is indie rock. In terms of reception for this album was very positively reviewed. AllMusic gave it 4.5 out of 5. Pitchfork gave it 9 out of 10. And they also ranked this album number 32 in their original top 100 albums of the 90s list. Rolling Stone gave this album 4.5 out of 5. And Spin Magazine gave this album 8 out of 10. For the production of this album, I read that they spent about $5,000 to make it, which is really cheap to make an album. This album also was recorded and mixed in only 7 days. So it's pretty amazing, especially at that time for an indie band to make an album on that cheap of a budget, mix it and record it in 7 days, and then release it and be as good as it turned out to be. And all the songs on this album were written, or at least credited to be written by all 4 members of Archers of Loaf. So I'm not going to go over the writing credits for each song because all the songs were written by the band themselves, Archers of Loaf. So now I'm going to go over the songs on the album. I'm going to go over each song in detail, talk about my thoughts on each song, if I liked it or if I didn't. Then at the end, I'm going to go over my top 3 songs from the album. I'm going to give my overall thoughts for the album. So the first song on this album is Web in Front. This is the first single to appear in this album, and this was the biggest hit of this album and probably of their career, honestly. This was a really big song when it came out, especially on college radio stations in the college, like young adult crowd. This was a really big song in the indie rock genre when it came out. And this was the first song I heard from the band. This is the song that introduced me to the band. And this is a really great song. It starts off with this very simple 5-snare hit intro by the drummer, who kind of counts in the song by doing this snare intro, and gives this song kind of this garage band indie feel right away that I really enjoy. Then Eric, who is the vocalist for this band, his vocals comes in and I really like his voice. He has this very chill, like talk sing type style with his voice that kind of reminds me of Jay Mascis from Dinosaur Jr. Again, he does this kind of talk singy style, which it makes it sound like he doesn't care about what he's singing or like how much it seems almost like he's not trying that much, but it still sounds really good. You know, he has really good like pitch. His voice just sounds really good for this type of indie rock music. And for me, he has this really great energy that I feel like is the energy I want out of an indie rock song. He really provides that. Lyrically, this is a love song, but it's sung with this surrealist lyricism that reminds me a lot of like a Pixies song. You can clearly hear like the influence of the Pixies throughout this whole album, but specifically with this song, it has a very Pixies energy to it, very Pixies influence, and you can tell by the lyricism where there's, you know, basically it's nonsensical at times. But how I interpret it is the singers talking about their ex and how they did nothing wrong in their relationship, but they're willing to do everything for their ex, but their ex left them anyway. So basically, it's a song of him kind of letting out all his grievances that he has with his ex and how she's at fault and he's not. But I really did like the lyrics in the song. It has this surrealist, nonsensical nature to it, but it really fits that 90s indie rock style that they're going for. And like I said, you can clearly hear those Pixies influences in this song. In terms of the instrumentation on this song, I think it's excellent. They use this really crunchy, distorted guitar that plays a very catchy riff. It sounds very noisy, but it's not overpowering in the mix. You can clearly hear the bass and the drums, and then there's a second guitar that comes in, plays this counter melody in like a higher registry near like the 12th string, and creates this really cool like noise of like sound, wall of sound effect. You know, just a lot of noise coming through. That just sounds really good. I really enjoyed the riffs that they're playing. They're very catchy. I think the drumming is great on this song. The drummer really, plays a very like catchy, up-tempo beat that just really keeps this song moving along nicely and gives it that classic indie pop rock feel. And the vocal performance in the second half of this song, I really enjoy because the background vocals come in and they start singing "All I Ever Wanted Was to Be Your Spine." But the way they say the word spine, it sounds very messy and sloppy, so you actually can't tell at first, especially on first listen, what they're even saying. And throughout this song, there's a lot of nonsensical lyrics, so you really can't even make out what they're saying. But I really like it when Eric comes back in and he's singing the verse over the background singer singing "All I Ever Wanted to Be Is Your Spine." So he catches up, and there's a point where his lyrics match the background vocals lyrics, and they both say "All I ever wanted was to be your spine," and he says it, the spine word, very loudly on top of the background vocals, so you can clearly hear it's like he's saying spine, which creates this really cool effect. It's almost like the words were like not like you couldn't really make out what they were saying, and then now you can. So it really helps with just the impact of the lyrics and just, you know, the crescendo of all the sound coming through. And it's just really cool. Just the I love bands that do that effect where they have the background vocals and the singer kind of singing different parts on top of each other. It creates a really cool effect that I really enjoy. Then there's the outro to the song, which I really enjoyed. You have Eric, who says that last wasted in this kind of defeated talk singy type vocal style that perfectly expresses his emotions in this song, where he's just defeated after, explaining to his ex-girlfriend and to us basically how much he's tried to keep this relationship alive and how much she has just ruined it for it. And I just thought that was just really powerful, just the emotion he gave when he said those last words, like that last wasted. It just sounded like he really was just done with this whole thing. And then there's this instrumental outro that sounds amazing, and it's just the perfect way to end this really great, catchy indie song. So yeah, this is one of my favorite songs on the album. And really, it's one of my favorite indie songs of all time. When I first heard this song, I was just immediately just addicted to how catchy it was. I would just replay it all the time, and it's an easy song to sing to dance to just rock out to, whatever you want to do. I mean, I can play the song on guitar. I've done like covers of this song, so I'm just a really big fan of this song. I think it's a classic, honestly, and it's really crazy to me that it's still kind of underrated song. It only has 5 million plays on Spotify, which, you know, compared to some of these other, you know, bands, even bands like Dinosaur Jr. and stuff who aren't as big as like a Nirvana, they still have like in the tens of millions of plays on a lot of their songs. So it's crazy to me that this song only has 5 million plays. But yeah, this is a really great opener to this album. It's short, but it feels complete, has really great energy throughout, and the instrumentation is amazing. And when you combine that with Eric's singing style, that kind of talk sing that he does, it just perfectly fits the vibe. And yeah, this is just a really, really great song and a really, really great opener for this album. So that was the first song on the album, Web in Front. The second song on this album is called Last Word. This song starts off with a 30-second instrumental intro where the drums play this really catchy beat with this really cool kick pattern, and then the guitars come in playing this kind of creepy, eerie sound using distortion and feedback that I really enjoyed. I thought it was a really cool effect. Then the other distorted guitar comes in playing this very like punk sounding riff that I thought sounded kind of generic, but I still liked it. And then right away, this song just has a totally different vibe from the last song. This song has a lot more of a punk rock feel to it, a lot more of a noise rock influenced song, and it's a lot less poppier than Web in Front. After the first verse, there's this really cool sounding instrumental interlude where one guitar is doing this distorted bend riff, and the other guitar is using this like wobbly, like tremolo type alien sounding effect. I don't know the exact effects that they use, but it sounds like some type of tremolo effect. And it's really short, but it does a great job of kind of building up into that chorus. And then the chorus comes in and it's very punk rock sounding. You know, it has a lot of noise in it. Eric is singing in that traditional punk rock style, the yelling, you know, very loud screaming, and you can't really understand exactly what he's saying, but I think it sounds great. I think it really fits the vibe of this song, which is, you can tell right away, it's really a more punk rock song. He does a great job of expressing his emotion in his singing. That's something I really enjoy about his singing. And the chorus, they do a great job of using the background vocals. They use the background vocals with Eric singing over them, similar to how they did in Web in Front, and creates, again, this really cool like harmony effect that I really enjoy. Lyrically, this song, again, the lyrics are nonsensical and surreal, which is kind of a theme for this album. A lot of the songs are like that. But again, it really fits that style of punk music that they're going for with this song. Lyrically, this is a really cool follow-up to Web in Front, because you can see in this song he's trying to rationalize why she left him, while in the last song he's just really mad about it and he's kind of like expressing his feelings. This song is more of like a rationalization of like why he's angry at his ex, why she actually left him, and it's more of like an internal reflection that I thought was a really cool follow-up to Web in Front. After the chorus, there's this really cool instrumental interlude section that's very noisy, very distorted, but includes this kind of like folky style guitar part that you can hear in the background kind of faintly that I thought was really unique. It had an interesting sound to this song and kind of a more twist on the traditional punk rock song. And then there's this bridge that comes down and builds back up that I really like into the next chorus. So it kind of pushes down the music, it becomes softer, and then it builds right back up, and it becomes really, really loud, really hard, really like punk in that second chorus that I really enjoyed. And I think the chorus in the song is really well done, and it really fits that punk sound that they were going for. So overall, I really like this song. I think it's a nice change of pace coming off of Web in Front, which again was a more poppy radio hit type indie rock song. This one's a lot more darker, It's more of a punk song, which I enjoy. I like that they switched up the styles. I think Eric's singing style actually works really well for this, the more noisier, screamier stuff. He does good at the more chill, like poppier indie songs, but I think he also does really good at this, more noisier punk rock songs, and you'll see that throughout the album. The instrumentation is great on this song. It's all unique. They use these different effects, that tremolo effect I was talking about before. So yeah, I mean, this song never feels boring. It has a great pace throughout, and I really enjoyed this song for sure. So that was number 2 on the album, Last Word. The third track on this album is called Wrong. This is the second single to appear on this album. This song starts off with a really catchy guitar riff that's very distorted, and then you have a second guitar coming in doing this really cool counter melody riff that's just very catchy. Just right away, this sounds just like a very catchy indie rock song. You have the bass and drums coming in together, building up to one of the, in my opinion, one of the best starts to a song that I've ever heard. I think the start of this song is just beautifully done. I definitely recommend to listen to this song just for the start. I think it's a great intro. And then you have Eric coming in singing very loudly, "You've Got It All Wrong," and he does this really cool thing where he sings right before the 1, so he kind of sings on no sound, and then as soon as he finishes "You Got It All Wrong," then all the instrumentation comes in. So it's a cool effect that rock bands have been doing for years, especially in like punk music, where you start right before the actual band starts with you. But I think it creates a really cool effect and just starts off the song with so much energy. Like right away, you can tell this is a song that does really well live because there's just so much energy. I can just imagine, being in the mosh pit, jumping around. This is one of those type of songs. I really love the guitar playing during the verse. The one guitar player plays more of like the rhythm part with the power chords, but the lead is doing this really cool, like intense, highly distorted, like squealing riff that sounds like something out of a Sonic Youth song, the very like noisy rock that Sonic Youth would do. But I think they sound amazing together, so I really enjoyed the guitar on this song. Eric singing on this song is perfect for me. I mean, there's just so much emotion in his vocal performance. This is one of my favorite vocal performances from him on this album. It reminds me a lot of Frank Black from the Pixies. He would sing in this super expressive, emotional, like screaming out his lyrics, and Eric really reminds me of Frank Black on this song. Then during the bridge cool down section after the first section, this is when Eric sings, "No, I don't think that you can love me anyway." He does his signature, he goes back to his signature like talk singing, kind of like stonery voice. That reminds me again of Jay Mascis from Dinosaur Jr. So he goes back to that voice, but it's amazing to me, like just hearing this song, how easy it is for him to just switch back and forth between these singing styles. That Frank Black, like super screaming, electric, energetic style to the way chilled down, laid back Jay Mascis style. I mean, it's crazy how easy it is for him to go back and forth, and it just sounds really great together. So lyrically, this song, it makes the most sense out of the songs, the last 2 songs that we've heard so far, and it's definitely the easiest one to understand the album so far. This one, Eric is singing to his ex that he wants her to go away from his life, to leave his life. She's the one that got the relationship wrong. She's the one that caused all this. And these lyrics kind of follow the same theme of the last 2 songs, where Eric is trying to move on from his past relationship. And so far, that seems like the theme of the album. It's an album where Eric is dealing with his, toxic relationship that he had with his ex, and he's trying to move on from that. And he's trying to, deal with that through this album. And I really enjoyed the lyrics so far on this album, and that includes this song. I think the lyrics are really well done in this song. And I just love his singing style. It's so expressive and emotional that really gets across what he's feeling and what he's trying to convey in his lyrics. My favorite part of the song is right after the bridge section. The song goes to a complete stop, and then it starts back up with even more energy than before. You can hear a little bit of the feedback from the heavily distorted guitars because they're going to a complete stop, and I like how they didn't cut that out of the mix. To me, it creates this like live effect feel that just feels very authentic, feels very like grunge, it feels very of the time. It's not like overly processed or too clean. It has that dirty sound, that lo-fi sound that I really enjoy. And then the last minute of this song, there's a solo and an outro. The background vocals come back in, and then the guitar comes in and does this really cool solo that I think really fits the song well. Eric comes back in and he starts singing She Gets What She Wanted, and I really like just the emotion that comes out of his voice when he's singing that song. And again, this is another one of my favorite songs on the album, and this is a really, really great song. One of my favorite Archers of Loaf songs, one of my favorite indie songs, especially of the 90s. It's so catchy. Right away, you can just tell this is going to be a hit. It reminds me a lot of the song Debaser by the Pixies, which is another one of my favorite songs. To me, it reminds me of that because the energy matches that song, where that song is just very energetic, very just the drive of energy goes throughout. Same thing with this song. This song has a perfect energy to it that starts from the intro to the end. It just goes throughout. The intro is one of the best intros I've heard in a song, and it just keeps on getting better as it goes throughout. I love how the song starts off with the chorus and then goes into the verse and the kind of bridge interlude section, so it kind of messes with the traditional song arrangement that you would find in a rock song, and it kind of adds to that chaotic kind of like indie rock nature to this song. So yeah, this is another classic from this album. To me, I think it's a very underrated song, and it's one of the best Archers of Loaf songs that they've done. So I would definitely recommend this song to listen to. It's a really, really great song, and yeah, it's one of my favorite on the album. So that was the third track on this album, Wrong. The fourth track on this album is called You and Me. This song starts off with the bass player playing this very slow tempo riff full of whole notes. Then you have Eric singing in this whispery voice, very soft voice, and then you have the static sound in the background, these quiet chimes, and right away you can just tell this is a total style change, a style shift from the last three songs on this album so far. It's a total change of pace, and I really like the diversification just so far in these four tracks, how each track just feels like its own, it has its own identity. And I really like Eric's, whisper talk singing style in the beginning of the song. He's singing in the style, it makes the song feel very depressing and sad. You can hear the emotion in the way he's singing. He just sounds like he's defeated. And I think that really works based on the lyrics that they're going for. So lyrically, this song, Eric is singing about how him and his ex have been so down lately and nothing has worked out positively for either of them in their lives. And the lyrics are very simple, but they're very powerful, and they have this very, sad, depressing tone to them that really, Eric's voice, he's able to convey that emotion that they're going for with the lyrics in this song really, really well. Then about a minute into the song, this song takes a complete 180 and becomes a noise rock song. So right after Eric finishes that first verse, there's just this rush of noise that comes in with both distorted guitars, the bass, the drums, and it really just comes out of nowhere. And it's just this chaotic, improvised, just noise wall that just comes in from all the instrumentation and creates this really cool live sound effect that I noticed. And you have Eric repeating the same lyrics he sang before. This time he's screaming out the lyrics, again that kind of Frank Black style, just yelling out the lyrics with great expression, great emotion, and I just really enjoyed that. This song uses that quiet, loud, quiet style that the Pixies made really, really famous. But you also see bands like Nirvana use, and a lot of bands of that time were using that style in the grunge music genre. But really, from what I've researched, they were really influenced by the Pixies, and the Pixies were the ones that really, made it their signature to do that quiet, loud, quiet style. And this song really follows that. This song also stylistically reminds me of the song Creep by Radiohead. This was off of their Pablo Honey album. That was their debut album from 1993. So it came out actually the same year as this album. But it has a very similar slow start that this song has, a very like quiet start, and then it goes into the more noisy rock chorus. So for some reason those songs just clicked in my head, and it kind of reminds me of that song. Obviously that song has a much cleaner production and it's a lot different. But it has that, again, this song has that quiet, loud, quiet style that I really enjoy. I'm a huge fan of the Pixies, so I'm always fans of bands that use that style and use it to good effect. And then the outro of this song, Eric goes back into that quiet singing style. So again, he does the quiet, loud, quiet. And to me, I really enjoyed this song a lot. I think, again, it's a lot different from the past 3 songs in this album so far. And I think this band is doing a great job of diversifying this album. I think they really nailed the noise rock, quiet, loud, quiet style for this song. Eric's a really great rock singer that has so much emotion. And I feel like this is a great song to show that, because when he starts off singing softly, you can hear the emotion in his soft singing, and it's the same emotion he has in his loud singing. The emotion doesn't change, it's just the way he's projecting changes, and just the instrumentation behind that changes. So I think he does a great job singing out these lyrics. They're very simple, but they have this kind of depressive tone to them. This song in general actually kind of reminded me of the song Undone, the Sweater Song by Weezer off their 1994 debut album. And I actually previously reviewed that album, and just listening to the song, it reminded me of Undone. How Weezer had that kind of creepy, eerie, slow intro, and then goes into the more noise rocky sound. But yeah, overall I really enjoyed this song. So far, this is a great start to this album. It's starting off really strong with 4 straight bangers, 4 straight songs that are just back to back. They have different styles, but they all sound really, really great together. So that was the 4th song on this album, You and Me. The 5th song on this album is called Might. This is the 3rd and last single to appear on this album. This song starts off with the standard pop-influenced indie rock intro. That's very similar to the same vibe you get from Web in Front. It's a very high-tempo song. It's definitely a change of pace from that last song that was a lot slower, a lot more experimental with the noise rock. This one has a more standard 90s indie rock sound to it. But I really like the instrumentation on this song. It has that classic clean indie rock sound. The main guitar riff is very catchy. It's mixed really well with the second guitar. It's doing this kind of counter melody thing that a lot of indie rock bands were doing at the time. Kind of reminds me a little bit of a Modest Mouse song of around this time in the 90s, using the second guitar to do counter melodies. And then you have the drum and bass, which don't really stand out to me in this song, but I think they do a great job of just keeping the energy going. And Eric's singing comes in, and he has, his traditional upbeat indie rock style and that talk sing style that he does. But overall, the chorus is really catchy. It doesn't really blow me away, and this song in general doesn't really blow me away like the last 4 songs, but it's a really catchy indie rock song, and the chorus is very catchy. Lyrically, Eric is singing about how much effort he places into his music to impress his ex, and how it's all wasted because she won't like this song anyway. He's questioning why he should even try anymore, why he should make music at all. I like that they're keeping with this theme of this album of him, his ex, and him just talking about all the toxicity he's going through with his ex in that relationship. And I like that, they're keeping these songs lyrically pretty simple, but they do their job to get the message across. And I think with his singing mixed with the lyrics, I think this song does a really good job at doing that. I like the part 2 where Eric sings, gets bored on the radio, bored with the video. The instrumentation during that part sounds a lot more distorted and up-tempo. That makes you, as the listener, just a lot more hyped. And I really do like this song. It's probably my least favorite song so far. but overall I still like it. I still think it's a really good song. It's the shortest song in the album at only 2 minutes and 5 seconds. But I think that's a perfect length for a song like this. Again, this was a single. This is a very catchy song that, probably does really good live for like college audiences of the time. It's a very fun song, but it's not really groundbreaking. I don't like it as much as Web in Front or Wrong, but it still has that same poppy energy that those songs have. So yeah, I think this is a good song overall, and so far I've really enjoyed this album. And that was the 5th song, Might. The 6th song on this album is called Hate Paste. This song has this folk sounding intro where a guitar and what sounds to me like a mandolin of some sort or some other stringed instrument is playing this short, catchy riff that I like, but it does become annoying after a while after repeating itself over and over again. Then a distorted guitar comes in playing this riff on top of the folk guitar riff, which creates this really weird sound that I didn't hate, but I also didn't really enjoy. Eric's singing style is in the style of a traditional folk style, and this song in general reminds me a lot of like a Neutral Milk Hotel song, and he's singing in that Jeff Magnum Neutral Milk Hotel singing style. But it's also mixed with his kind of talk singing style, which I thought was okay. I think it's different, but for me, this is his weakest vocal performance because it just feels like this is out of his comfort zone. Him singing this folky style just doesn't really fit with his kind of nonchalant, like talk singing vocal performance that he does. And then the lyrics to this song are probably the most nonsensical in the album yet. They're very surreal. After reading them, I honestly don't understand what they mean even after reading the lyrics. And I have no problem with these type of nonsensical, incoherent lyrics that they're using. I think it's just important to get across the emotion, and I feel like on the last 5 songs they've done a great job of getting across the emotion. This song, they don't do as well of a job, but you can tell that he's angry, he's complaining, so it has that vibe, but because it has that folk rock influence, it just doesn't hit as well for me. But my guess is he's just still talking about his problems he's having with his ex. That is kind of the theme of this album. In the chorus, it keeps that same folky sound, but adds in more noise. You have the heavier drums, the heavier guitars, and you can hear the noise rock influences. So overall, I wasn't a huge fan of this song. I don't think it's terrible, but it's definitely my least favorite song on the album so far. I will say that I'm not the biggest fan of indie folk and folk influenced indie rock music or folk rock. I kind of prefer, I don't mind folk music, but I kind of prefer it separate from like the rock guitar or like punk guitar music. I feel like those genres, I like both of them, but just better separately than combined. But I will say, if you are a fan of folk rock, I actually really think this song isn't that badly, the instrumentation isn't that bad. His singing style, you can at least tell that he has emotion that's coming across clearly with this song. He has that angry, complaining vibe. I don't think his singing style works the best with this kind of traditional folk singing style that he was trying. But I do appreciate that they're trying to be experimental, that they're trying to change their sound throughout this album. So each song just sounds unique. It has its own tone to it, its own style, its own identity. So I really do enjoy that they're mixing it up, especially this far into an indie rock album from the 90s. A lot of the albums, 90s rock albums, they have that samey feel, but this album so far is just switching up. Each song just feels like it's its own. So this is not my favorite song on the album, but I do appreciate them being experimental. So that was the 6th song on this album, called Hate Paste. The 7th song on this album is called Fat. This song starts off with this really great sounding, crunchy, distorted guitar intro that has this very lo-fi and very noisy sound to it. It kind of reminds me of a Guided by Voices song, with just how like noisy and lo-fi it is. Then the other guitar, the bass, and the drums, they come in with even more noise and creates this like explosion, this wall of noise that I think is really well done. The mixing on this is really well done, where it's not too overpowering. You can still hear the melodic nature of the instruments. I'm not a huge fan of noise rock or like industrial rock in general when it's just pure noise and you can't, it's just pure, almost static like. This one, this noise rock song has a lot more melodic features to it, but still sounds chaotic, still sounds messy, but you can hear the musicianship through that noise. And then the music stops, and then Eric comes in yelling, why you fucking care for me? I'm black, I'm blue, and bruised all the fucking time. I really like, he does that same effect that he did in Wrong, where he starts singing before the one, so you just hear all the emotion of him just screaming out those lyrics. And it just is brutal, because then the noise wall comes in, and it's just a crescendo of just noise, a crescendo of just sound just coming through. That is just, it blows me away, honestly. It's just, there's so much emotion that just comes through on this song. The way he sings, you can like hear the pain behind his voice. I think his vocal performance is amazing on this song, and I think he has the perfect voice for this type of music, because it's powerful, but it's also clear, and it has its own identity. It's not just screaming. Like, you can hear his emotion in his vocal performance, which I really enjoyed, and it kind of almost gives this like live singing style to it. And lyrically, I mean, just from the instrumentation from the song, and you can already tell that he's mad. Eric is mad. He's singing about how his ex doesn't care about him, how he shouldn't care about her because she doesn't care about him. He calls her fat. He says that he's not happy as he once was to see her. So, I mean, these lyrics on this song really match how brutal like the instrumentation is on this song. You can interpret these lyrics as being very toxic, maybe misogynistic. I mean, this relationship just seems like a very toxic relationship, and this really seems like Eric is just he's almost like at a therapy session, just getting out all his emotion, getting out all his anger. And this song to me is like the perfect song for that, because it's just his vocal performance. You can just tell he's mad, and it's just, this is one of those songs that's just like pure energy, pure just emotion. And this is the shortest song on the album. It's only 1 minute and 18 seconds long, so it's over really fast, but it's just a wall of noise, and I really like this song. This is kind of the first like true noise rock song on this album, and I like how this song keeps the energy throughout while still feeling melodic at times, and it feels well written in terms of the music. It's not just like pure noise, like they're just using all these effects. Like, you can actually hear some of the musicianship throughout the noise. This song, it sounds like the 90s Sonic Youth albums, like Dirty or Experimental Jet Set, where they were just very noisy albums, but they had melodic features to them. And Eric's singing, I think, works perfectly for a song like this, because you can feel the emotion in his vocal performance. So yeah, I really like this song a lot. I'm usually not, like I mentioned earlier, I'm not a huge fan of like the industrial, like super noisy rock music, but I think this song works really well in that genre. It still feels melodic. You can still feel the tonal identity of Archers of Loaf through this noise rock song. So that was the 7th song on this album, Fat. The 8th song on this album is called Plumb Line. This song starts off with a really great intro guitar riff that's very catchy. It has a very upbeat sound to it, which is a nice change of pace again from the last 2 songs. So again, throughout this album, they're keeping these songs separate. They're not doing too many of the same songs or songs from the same style next to each other. So this album feels probably more diverse than it is, just because of the way they place these songs in this album, which I think is a great decision that they did. Then Eric's voice comes in after that intro riff with his signature like talk singing style, with the drums and bass. They sound really good, and this has a classic Archers of Loaf, like indie rock lo-fi sound to it. The instrumentation has a very similar sound to the song Might from earlier in the album, which I think is great. You know, it has that classic, this is one of those classic Archers of Loaf's songs. It has that same sound to it. I really like the chorus for this song. You know, it's very catchy. You can definitely hear the pop influences on this song. You know, I really like the drumming and bass during the chorus. They do this really cool chromatic section where the bass kind of goes down chromatically, and it sounds really well done. It sounds like a chorus that was well written, and you can tell they took some time in constructing it, which I really enjoy and appreciate. Lyrically, Eric is singing again about his ex, how she is messed up in the head, and that the breakup is her loss and not his. He sarcastically calls her an indie rocker throughout the song because the way she dresses, she looks the part, she looks more authentic than he does. And again, this song stays on this theme of, you know, this toxic relationship he has with his ex and him trying to move on, and how, you know, she was the one that, you know, was really messed up and caused the breakup. And I do like the lyrics in this song. I think they're very funny and kind of clever. This is probably like the funniest song lyrically in the album. And yeah, this is probably honestly the best lyrically written song in this album. You know, there's some really clever lyrics that I actually really enjoy with this song. And then I really like this build-up section that happens after the first chorus. It's really short because this is a really short song, but it does a great job of building up to that last chorus. And then the last 30 seconds of this song are probably my favorite part of this song. There's this really short noise rock section that has this eerie, creepy sounding guitar with the drum build-up going on beneath it. And I feel like this goes right into the outro of the song with the background vocals repeating, she's an indie rocker, nothing's gonna stop her. And while the background vocals are repeating that, you have Eric singing on top of that, Mina thing. So he keeps repeating Mina thing, you know, while the background vocals are singing their part. And it has this classic, like almost Beatles style of just, you know, call and response that I really like. And I think it's a really cool ending to this song. So yeah, this is one of my favorite songs on the album. I'm really surprised this wasn't a single because it's short. It's about the same length as Might. And to me, this is a lot more catchier than the song and more up-tempo than the song Might. You know, and I like Might too, but I just think this song has more of like a radio hit feel to it. So yeah, I'm just kind of surprised that they didn't use this as one of the singles. But yeah, you know, overall, I really enjoy this song. I feel like Eric's singing on this song is really well done. This is probably my favorite song lyrically on this album. And this really feels like a song that probably is really great sounding live, just because of how short it is, how catchy and up-tempo it is, and just the lyrics. So this is really like a hidden gem for this album because, you know, it wasn't a single, but it has those single like qualities that you look for in a song. So yeah, I really enjoyed this song. That was Plumb Line, which was the 8th song on this album. The 9th song on this album is called Learo, You're a Hole. This song starts off with a heavily distorted guitar playing this fast, squealing riff, and then the other instruments come in with this really dark, brooding rhythm sound. And then Eric comes in and his voice is in this quiet talk singing style. He sounds more talky in this song compared to other songs on the album. And I really like this verse. It has this very dark sound to it. You can hear the grunge influences in this song, but you can still hear aspects of Archers of Loaf, their kind of indie rock style throughout. And then the chorus comes in, it's very loud and fast. And this is another song that follows that quiet, loud, quiet formula. This chorus sounds a lot more experimental than some of the other noisier choruses on this album. It's not just noise. You can hear the guitar like doubling over each other, playing this squealy riff that has this almost bluesy sound to it. So you can hear the melody and the melodic parts of the noise in there. And then later in the chorus, you hear the background vocals singing different parts with Eric repeating "You're a Hole" over the top of these vocals, and it creates this really cool effect that helps create the kind of wall of sound and noise that you hear with the other instrumentation on top. And lyrically, this is another one of those more surreal, nonsensical, experimental songs. The lyrics don't really make much sense even after reading them. The biggest thing I can take from this is when the chorus, when Eric's repeating "You're a hole," it sounds like he's saying "You're a hoe." So I think that that's kind of what they're going for. And he's probably talking about his ex and, you know, how terrible she is. So again, I don't mind this lyrical kind of nonsensical, surreal style as long as the emotion comes across. And I think with the noise rock that this song, you know, you can hear, it just gives off this chaotic, angry vibe to it that I feel like that emotion is coming across. So I don't have a problem per se with the lyrics. I don't think this is one of the strongest songs lyrically, but I don't have a problem with it. And I really like the noisy instrumental outro in this song. I feel like it really flows really well into the next song in this album, which is also very noisy. So overall, I like this song. When I first heard it, I wasn't a huge fan of it, but the more I listen to it, the more it kind of grows on me. It's very different. It's probably the most experimental song on this album so far in terms of it sounds noisier than the other indie rock songs in this album, but it's not a total noise rock song like Fat was, which is much more of like a noise rock song. So this is kind of like in the middle. It has almost more of a 2000s era like indie rock, garage rock sound to it. Kind of reminds me of a song that would be on the album like Fever to Tell by the Yeah Yeah Yeahs. It has that like really noisy kind of like garage rock lo-fi feel to it. And this song for me really sits in between the poppier side of Archers of Loaf, which I really like, which is like the Web in Front wrong side, and then the noise rock side, which I also really like, and like Fat. So it's kind of like in the middle of that. You can tell it's a little bit more experimental, but I think it adds something new to this album. And again, they're really diversifying the songs on this album, so you just don't feel like you're getting the same song over and over again. So, you know, I really like this song. I think it's a good song. It definitely grows on you the more you listen to it. But yeah, that was Learo, You're a Hole, and that's the 9th song on this album. The 10th song on this album is called Sick File. The intro to this song starts off with the same vibes that the last song ended with. This very loud, fast, distorted guitar intro that's very noisy, and then you have the drummer playing this hi-hat pattern with this very fast tempo, and then the singing comes in and it's very fast and loud and incoherent. And Eric puts on like this punk style voice, and this song right away you can tell is a hardcore punk song. You know, this reminds me of classic punk bands like Minor Threat and Black Flag. It sounds like no other song in this album so far, but I like how this song flows really well from the last song, even though it's different genres, and this is more of a punk song. But I really am a fan of punk music, and especially like that late 70s, early 80s punk sound and kind of the hardcore punk. So I was a really big fan of this song, and this really sounded authentic to me. You know, it just sounded like it really shocked me that this band was going with this route, especially this late into this album. But they did a great job, you know. Eric's singing just really fits his style really well. You know, he sounds like someone from that era of punk music. And lyrically, you know, just listening to this song, I really can't make out the lyrics because of his, you know, super fast and loud, incoherent singing style. But after reading the lyrics, it seems like Eric is singing sarcastically about how you should conform and stay quiet and not speak out, which is a common lyrical style in punk music. which is why I feel like this song is a homage or tribute to that classic hardcore punk scene from the early 80s. The members of this band were probably fans of hardcore punk bands of the time, like Minor Threat and Bad Brains when they were growing up. So I think it's really cool that they made a song in that style, and they're paying homage to bands like that. And I really like this song. It feels very experimental, which is good. It feels a lot different than the other songs on this album. And I think they really nail that punk sound. This sounds like a song from that era. And, it has that, fast, it's short, it's loud. Eric's vocal sound and his style works really well for this type of music. He's a great yeller and screamer. And I think he gets the right emotion out on a song like this. And coming right off of that last song, which ended with that noise rock part to seamlessly transition into this hardcore punk song, I think is a really cool transition. So yeah, overall, this is a really great song on this album. I think it's a lot different and a lot more experimental than the other songs on this album. But yeah, I feel like this song is kind of a tribute to that hardcore punk scene from the late 70s, early 80s. So I really did like this song, and that was the 10th song on this album, called Sick File. The 11th song on this album is called Toast. The first 2/3 of this song is instrumental. So it starts off with this combination of the guitar riff and all these different effects, and this creates this chilling kind of eerie sound. So they have this chilling feedback sound. They have the random distorted guitar notes. There's this static sound, and there's all these other sounds that kind of create this chilling feeling to this song. And then all the sounds slowly start to get louder from the intro as it goes on, until the other guitar, the bass, and the drums come in, and they play this short stabbing sound, and then they go away. And it's this repeats, they'll have this melodic part, and then all the noise will just come in and go away. And then after about a minute into the instrumental section, the other instruments come in and they stay this time. And they play this very noisy, experimental, art rock sounding part that sounds very chaotic, very improvised. And I like the start to the song. This is almost more of an atmospheric type song compared to the other noise rock songs on this album. And I think part of that is because it's instrumental and you're not hearing Eric's vocal performance that's usually more angry. So it kind of drives the kind of energy of the song. This song feels a lot more atmospheric because there's no vocals, at least for this part, which I liked. I thought that was kind of they're kind of switching up on that noise rock style that they have done throughout this album. And then around 2 minutes into the song, another guitar part comes in, playing this more standard Archers of Loaf sounding indie riff. And then the rest of the band comes in, and it sounds more like a normal indie rock instrumental song. But you can still hear that chilling intro sound, that melody playing softly in the background. Then Eric's singing comes in, and he's using his more chill talk singing voice. It starts off very soft and chill, and lyrically the lyrics are nonsensical in this song. They're surreal and chaotic, and they really just fit the style of the song really well. And then in the last minute of this song, the song turns into a really fast, loud indie rock sound. So it kind of reminds me of the song Wrong from earlier in the album. And Eric starts off screaming his lyrics in that Frank Black style, while the instrumentation turns into more of a classic punk rock influenced sound. Again, kind of remind me of that song Wrong from earlier in the album. And I really like the ending to this song. There's this instrumental section, and then the background vocals start singing With My Toast over and over again, while Eric sings on top of that, There's Something Wrong. And again, it has that call and response style that bands like the Beatles did in the 60s that I just really enjoy. It creates this really cool effect just sonically, just with the lyrics and the vocal performances that I really enjoyed. And so yeah, overall I really like this song. It's the longest song on this album at 4 minutes and 37 seconds. And it kind of reminds me of like those classic Ender songs on albums, kind of like Only in Dreams by Weezer, where it's kind of like an epic, where it kind of goes through these different genres and it kind of takes you on the story. It's just like in an indie rock kind of Archers of Loaf style. So the only thing that's kind of weird about this song, and this is a nitpick for sure, but I feel like this song worked better as the last song on this album because it's just so epic. So it almost feels like you're kind of ending off this story, but I really like how they go through different styles in this song. They start off with this kind of noise rock instrumental section that turns into this, the classic Archers of Loaf sounding indie rock section. Then finally it ends with this more like punk rock, hardcore punk section where Eric is singing in that screaming Frank Black inspired style. And I feel like, going through those different genres, it makes the song feel very epic, very complete, and it feels like a natural ending to the album. But again, that's a nitpick. Overall, I really enjoy this song. They do a great job of making all these parts feel connected, feel like they're the same song. They're not like going too crazy. And just overall, I thought this was a really good song. So that's the 11th song on this album. It's called Toast. The 12th song on this album is called Backwash. Now this song starts off with this really catchy indie rock sound that makes your head nod right away. And this intro reminds me a lot of the song Helicopter by Block Party. This was a song off their debut album Silent Alarm, which was released in 2005. So this song was released over 10 years after this album came out, but I feel like you can hear influences of the song Helicopter in this song, especially just the intro, but it has a more like crunchier, dirty sound to it than a song like Helicopter, which is a much more cleaner. But I really like the instrumentation in this song. The guitar riffs are really catchy. The drum beat has this very like pop punk rock sound to it. It creates a really fun indie rock sound overall. It's loud, it's fast, it's chaotic, and it's a really well mixed song. It has that classic Archers of Loaf sound to it, that college indie rock sound that I really enjoy. Eric singing in this song is very energetic. It really drives this song along. It has those same like incoherent sounds that he sings with that kind of reminds me of a song like Web in Front. You can't totally understand exactly what he's singing or the lyrics that he's singing, but I feel like that really fits this sound, and I feel like this is where he's his best. This is where I enjoy him the most, where he's singing these more like poppier indie rock songs, but he still has that kind of like punk chaotic lyricism and just his delivery. I think that just works really well. And lyrically, this is another nonsensical song with their kind of signature surrealist writing styles. Eric sounds very angry. He has a lot of energy in this song. It kind of reminds me of a song like Wrong, where there's just a lot of energy throughout the song. But overall, the lyrics I feel like aren't the main chorus in this song. They're the kind of additional part, but it's really just the instrumentation and the music around the lyrics with Eric's singing style and his tone that really makes this song so great. And then during what I believe is the chorus, and this is the part where Eric sings Not Gonna Turn On, it's about a minute into the song, he uses this really cool mic effect that sounds really distorted and really lo-fi. And it reminds me a lot of the voice effect that Kim Deal used in the song Cannonball by The Breeders, which was from their second album Last Splash, released in 1993. But to me, it just the effect that he uses on his voice during his section just remind me a lot of Kim Deal during that song. That effect that she used that just sounds very washed out and just very staticky and distorted. And then after the chorus, there's this really catchy instrumental section that sounds really well done. You can tell that this band is having a lot of fun performing this song. This is a very upbeat, energetic song. And then the outro is amazing to this song. You get to hear all these different voices overlapping. It sounds like Eric probably in the studio just like overlapped his voice. But it creates this like noise wall of instrumentation and voices and just pure energy, and then the song fades out at the end with the song still playing strong, but it's just like a fade out, which I'm not always the biggest fan of, because I feel like that can be kind of a cop out, that can be kind of lazy to just kind of fade out your song and not have like a true ending to it. But I feel like it really fits the vibe of this song, like the energy never stops throughout. This is a very hype song, very energetic, and I just really enjoyed this song a lot. It kind of gives me those early 2000s indie rock vibes. Makes me think of bands like Arctic Monkeys, Block Party, like I mentioned earlier, the Yeah Yeah Yeahs. You can kind of hear those influences in a song like this. So it feels like those bands listen to Archers of Loaf and this album in particular, because you can really hear the influences in this song. And with this song, you can clearly hear the signature Archers of Loaf style, that really fun, catchy indie rock, and it just has everything I want of an indie rock song. The intro to the end, there's just energy nonstop. It's noisy. The lyrics are incoherent. They're chaotic. And it's a little bit of, there's a little experimental parts to it. It's a little weird at parts, which I like too. It's not just the standard song. There's parts that sound a little bit experimental, like with the vocal effect that Eric uses. That again remind me of kind of the song Cannonball by the Breeders. And this is just a really catchy, fun song that probably was amazing to hear live when they're an active band in the 90s, performing live like this song. It definitely feels like a hidden gem on this album, because again, this is not a single for this album, but it could have been a single in a way just because of just how fun and just energetic this song is. It's a very lo-fi song. And I feel like that's probably one of the reasons why they didn't want to make it a single. It has that kind of lo-fi feel to it, but Eric's singing is perfect for this song. And just overall, I really enjoyed this song. It's just a great indie rock song, and that was the 12th song on this album, called Backwash. The 13th song on this album is called Slow Worm. This song starts off with this really catchy guitar riff that sounds very melodic, and it's also a lot slower tempo than that last song, so it's a nice change of pace from that last song. The second guitar and the bass, they come in at the start of each measure with this like wall of sound and noise that sounds really lo-fi. Reminds me of like a song from Guided by Voices. And I really like the drumming in this song. It's really catchy with some unique accents that he does on the hi-hats that create this kind of more experimental indie sound that I really like. The other guitar is using an effect that sounds like a wah-wah that's creating this very cool, kind of dreamy, noisy counter melody sound. But overall, I really like the instrumentation on this song. This is very just well done musicianship and instrumentation throughout this entire song. Then you have Eric singing in this song. It's just the same, standard, really well done singing. You can hear the emotion in his vocal performance. You can hear the vocal cracks, and but it still sounds chill. He still has that like kind of chill vibe to him. At parts, it kind of reminds me of like Kurt Cobain singing. Kurt Cobain would have those kind of vocal cracks and like kind of strains in his voice, but it still sounded very chill. It kind of reminds me of that style a little bit on this song. And then lyrically, Eric is singing about how his ex is hurting others and everyone's tired of her, but they've become numb. He's the only one who's willing to call her out on her BS. and he thinks that everyone else is blind to it, you know. And I think lyrically this song works really well as an ender to this album, because after all the complaining that Eric has done about his ex and his toxic relationship throughout this entire album, it becomes like all for nothing, because no one else has the energy to care as much as he does about all this. And I interpret this as, you know, no one else is affected as much by her as he is, and he's the one that has to accept that he needs to move on from this. You know, he can't convince others to like see that she's evil or she's the bad one in the relationship. He's the one that has to move on. So I feel like this is a really great contrast to the first song on the album, Web in Front, where Eric is telling everyone that, you know, he's not the problem, she is. Now he's realizing that he is becoming part of the problem because he can't get over this. So I feel like this is a very introspective song. You know, and maybe I'm overthinking this. Maybe it's just like more surreal, more, you know, it's more nonsensical, but just how I interpret it, I feel like it's being very introspective, and it really adds to like the complete nature of this album. You know, just from the beginning to end, you can see this kind of conceptual story lyrically that I really enjoyed all the songs, you know, lyrically, and I feel like this song is a really great ender. And I really like the instrumental section that happens after each chorus and verse. They include this really cool guitar riff that sounds very messy, very dirty, but I just really enjoy it. And this song eventually goes back to the same sound from that intro section, with the guitar and bass creating this noisy effect at the start of each measure. And then the song ends with this really cool guitar solo that happens in the background of all the noise that's going on. It sounds very dreamy, very atmospheric. It kind of reminds me of the shoegaze sound from that period, from bands like Slow Dive and My Bloody Valentine. You know, it gives me that same effect of those bands. And you can definitely hear the influences from the, you know, shoegaze and dream pop genres of that time period. Again, bands like Slow Dive, Ride, Lush, My Bloody Valentine, you know, they were making this really popular like early 90s shoegaze music with like lots of effects, and create these like really cool like dream-like atmospheric effects. You can really hear that in this song. So overall, you know, I really like this song. It sounds like Archers of Loaf were like fans of those type of bands, those kind of like you know, shoegaze bands, so they're trying to experiment with this sound. But again, I appreciate that they're experimenting with this album. You know, each song has its own identity. Even songs that are similar sound different enough that you can tell, okay, that's that different song. You know, it doesn't have that samey feel to it. And I really like this song. You know, even the name of the song, Slow Worm, seems like it's a reference to the shoegaze genre, because it's a very slow tempo song. It has this very dirty, lo-fi, dreamy at times sound to it that I really enjoy. And it doesn't sound like any other song on the album. You know, I really like the lyrics to this song. I feel like they're very introspective, they're very reflective in nature, and it fits the more dreamy style of this song. You know, he's reflecting on his relationship, on why is he making this album, why is he talking about this publicly, why is he complaining about this, because it seems like no one else cares. So it's like very introspective feel to it that fits that dreamy instrumentation that you hear in this song. And I feel like this was a really great way to end the album. It has that, you know, just perfect beginning and end to an album that just feels complete. You know, it feels like a complete concept after you're done. And then you start again from the beginning in Web in Front, and it just is an easy album to listen to over and over again. So now I'm going to talk about my top 3 songs on the album in no particular order. The first song is Web in Front. I'm a big fan of this song. This was the first song I heard from them. This is how I discovered them. And it's just a super catchy, up-tempo, fun song that is just, it makes sense that this is their most popular song. It's short, but it's just fun and it's catchy, and it's just a really great indie rock song. I definitely, it's one of my favorite indie rock songs of all time. Honestly, I really enjoy that song. The second song is Wrong. This, like Weapon Front, is another really fun, really energetic song. It's one of my favorite songs, period. One of my favorite indie rock songs. It's just like super energetic. I love the stop and start nature of it. Just how noisy it is. Eric singing on that song is just amazing to me. And then my third song is Backwash. This is that really catchy indie rock song that gives me those like 2000s indie rock vibes to it, that has that helicopter sounding intro. It has that really cool like lo-fi vocal effect that sounds like Cannonball by the Breeders. And it's just a really cool song. It's a really fun song. It's very noisy. The lyrics are incoherent. It's chaotic. It's experimental. And it's just like a really cool indie rock song. So these three songs to me, they're all just amazing songs. But I could have chose so many other songs on this album that I really enjoy. Plumb Line is a song I really enjoy. Sick File, I thought it was a really great song on this album. Fat was a really great song. Might, which was the other single. So it's like there's just so many songs that I could mention on here, but I had to pick three, and the three that I picked were Weapon Front, Wrong, and Backwash. So now I'm gonna go over my overall thoughts on this album. To me, Archers of Loaf on this album were clearly very influenced by the Pixies' second album, Doolittle. When they were making this album, you can, throughout the album, you can hear those influences, just from the surreal, nonsensical lyrics, from the quiet, loud, quiet, strong structure, to Eric's singing style that reminds me a lot of Frank Black's singing style on that album. And I feel like if you're a fan of the Pixies and their sound on Doolittle, you'll really like this album. The Doolittle album came out 4 years before this album in 1989, but you can hear just in 4 years how much of an impact the Pixies made on the industry with that album. Kurt Cobain has talked about how Nirvana Nevermind was heavily influenced by the Pixies. So a lot of these super monumental grunge and indie rock bands from the time, those albums were influenced by Doolittle. And I feel like this album in particular, you can just hear right away the Doolittle influences from Weapon Front, and songs like Wrong, which sound like Debaser. And just go through the album, using all the, even the folk style stuff that that the Pixies did in Doolittle too, you can kind of hear in here too. So it's just, that was just something I noticed that just right away, this really reminded me of, the Pixies album Doolittle, which is one of my favorite albums, and I can definitely hear that influence in this album. I really like in this album how they experiment with so many different genres. This is not your typical indie rock album where it's just the same type of garage rock. Some of it you may like, but it kind of stays the same throughout. Throughout this album, Archers of Loaf, they switch their style throughout. They have indie rock sections, they have noise rock sections, they have more lo-fi, garage rock sections. They have the hardcore punk songs. They have that folk rock song. Even the shoegaze song, the last song, has the shoegaze influences. So it's just crazy how diverse this album is, especially for its time, where a lot of albums were becoming more standardized and people are kind of making the same songs. This album's crazy diverse, and I really am, I really appreciate that. I feel like that there's effort that went into this album to create the diversity of it. I want to talk about Eric Bachman, who for me is one of the best indie rock vocalists of all time. I feel like he's super underrated, and he has this really cool, chill, talk singy voice that makes him sound very unique. When you hear his voice, it sounds like him. There's no one really that just sounds like his voice. He has this very cool, like talk singing voice that it sounds great on like the slower, sadder, more depressed songs, but also sounds great on the more expressive, energetic songs, the fast songs. I feel like he keeps that energy going. In the lower registry songs and those slower songs, his voice becomes more cracky and raspy, and it kind of reminds me of Kurt Cobain's voice, which gives off this really cool, like grunge vibe to the way he sings. But he also kind of sounds like he doesn't care about singing perfectly, even though he sounds great. He hits all the notes. It almost sounds easy the way he just like lets out all these notes, and they sound really, really great together. And he just has this very expressive singing style that just, when you hear it, it just like you can hear the emotion in his voice. He's kind of like the perfect mixture between that J Mascis chill stoner vocal style and Frank Black's like super expressive, energetic vocal style, which I think is like the perfect mixture for this genre of indie rock music. I really enjoyed the instrumentation and song arrangement on this album. I feel like this album has some really great song arrangement. They don't always stay to the same style. They do that, stop and start action. They all have like clear intros and outros. So I think the song arrangement's great. And then the instrumentation, it's not groundbreaking, but I think it's really solid all around. The drumming definitely stood out for me. I thought the drumming was really well done. The guitar playing was well done too. All the different effects that they used. You could tell they put some effort into that. And then Eric's singing, I feel like that's part of the instrumentation too, especially on those more noise rock songs where it's like, it's less about the lyrics and more about the noises that he's making with his singing. And I feel like that's what really makes this band special, is this, they use all the different types of instrumentation together with all these different combinations just to create this really well done sound. And then the mixing on this album I thought is really well done. It has a very lo-fi feel to it, and obviously this probably is due to the limitations of making this album with only $5,000, especially in 1993, before all of this music was mixed digitally in the box with Pro Tools and stuff. Back then, using more analog gear, making an album of $5,000 is kind of amazing. And I feel like it is a lo-fi album. It definitely seems like, but I feel like that's the indie charm to it. That's what makes it indie. That's what makes it such a great album, is like that lo-fi kind of like saturation on this album. It almost has like a dirty filter on it that I feel like is just, it makes indie rock albums just sound that much better. I'm not a fan of these indie rock albums that sound way too clean, and especially nowadays I feel like a lot of albums sound very cleanly mixed and almost too clean, and some of them add different saturation to make it sound more like rustic and dirty on it. But I mean, this album just sounds authentically lo-fi. It really does fit that sound. So I thought, overall, I thought this was a really great album. And for my rating, I'm gonna give this album a 5 out of 5. This was something I debated about a lot, because I feel like it's not a perfect album, but it's a very consistent album. Consistently, this album is great throughout. Even that one song that I wasn't a huge fan of, which is the Hate Pace song, which is like the more folk rocky song. I feel like if you're a fan of that genre, you probably would enjoy it more than me. But even so, the tone and just the theme of the album is still present in that song. His singing, his like the angry emotions that he gets out while singing in that song still fits that song well. So it still stays consistent, even though I'm not a big fan of that song. The consistent theme and concept stays throughout. So I mean, for that, I just feel like for that, and then just how many songs on here are just like amazing songs, like some of my favorite songs. And I feel like just overall listening to this album multiple times, I feel like it has to be a 5 for me. It's one of those albums that it's one of my favorite albums of all time for sure. You know, I have to think about this album in like my top 10 list, because it's just, the more I listen to it, the more I realize how much I truly love this album. You know, I think a lot of that has to do with Eric's vocal style. It's very unique, and it just fits this band perfectly. You know, I love the concept of him talking about his toxic relationship with his ex, and how by the end he becomes more reflective on his own issues in the relationship. You know, this album almost feels like a therapy session at parts, where he's just expressing all his feelings about his relationship. Some of them are almost uncomfortable. Some of them are very emotional, but it feels authentic. And that's one thing I really appreciate with albums, is when they are truly authentic to the songwriter, and they don't feel like they're written by, you know, a team of songwriters. This feels like a very authentic indie rock album, has a theme throughout. You know, it's chaotic, it's surreal, it's incoherent, it's messy, it's loud, it's noisy, and it's everything that I want out of an indie rock album. So yeah, you know, my rating is a 5 out of 5. Again, it's not a perfect album, but it's one of my favorite albums of all time. And I mean, I would recommend this album to anyone who's a fan of indie rock music. But specifically, if you're a fan of the 80s and 90s bands like the Pixies, Dinosaur Jr., Pavement, Sonic Youth, Superchunk, Built to Spill, you know, if you're a fan of bands like that, who maybe had more of a popularity than a band like this, definitely check out Archers of Loaf. I feel like they're an underrated band for that time period. They had some really catchy indie songs, and I think the fan bases of those bands would really enjoy this album. And then also, if you're a fan of more modern indie bands like Arctic Monkeys, Block Party, the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, Hop Along, the Thermals. You know, if you're a fan of bands like that, the more like 2000s, 2010 indie bands that you can hear the influences in their music from a band like Archers of Loaf, I definitely recommend this album. You know, you can hear the influences of this album in those acts, you know, and you can hear aspects of the sounds that they're doing here that sound experimental becoming normalized and becoming part of the sound of indie rock in the 2000s. So again, overall, I really enjoyed this album, and that does it for this review. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed, and have a great day. Peace out.